I found a confession letter in our newly purchased home's attic. When I showed it to my neighbor, I discovered why our house sold for half its value. When we bought our Victorian fixer-upper for an unbelievable price, the selling agent told us the elderly owner had died and her children just wanted a quick sale. At $240,000 for a 5-bedroom in a neighborhood where similar homes went for double that, we couldn't sign fast enough despite the dated interior and obvious repair needs. On our third day of renovations, I ventured into the claustrophobic attic to assess what we'd need for proper insulation. Behind a loose piece of wood paneling, I found a small metal box containing a handwritten letter and several yellowed newspaper clippings from 1986. The letter began simply, "To whoever finds this, I need to confess what I did." What followed was a detailed confession from Margaret Wilson, our home's previous owner, describing how she had poisoned her husband Robert with antifreeze over 6 months, making it appear he died from kidney failure. The newspaper clippings covered his obituary and a small article about his unexpected passing at 42. According to her letter, Robert had been having an affair with the woman next door and planned to leave Margaret for her, taking their 3 children and the house that had been in Margaret's family for generations. She wrote that she'd rather send him to God for judgment than lose her children and home. The letter ended, "I've lived with this secret for 30 years. No one ever suspected his mistress still lives next door, watching me raise my children in the home she thought would be hers. I'll face my judgment soon, but needed someone to know the truth. I was holding evidence of a perfect murder. Margaret had died peacefully 3 months ago at 89, never charged with any crime. My husband wanted to call the police immediately, but I felt strange sympathy for this woman I'd never met. She'd protected her children and home in a desperate, terrible way. What good would exposing her now do? Her children, now in their 60s, would have their memory shattered. The case was too old for justice in any meaningful sense. We argued about it for days. Finally, I suggested we speak with the neighbor first. If the mistress was still alive, she deserved to know what happened to Robert. The property record showed the same owner next door since 1979, Eleanor Jenkins, now 81. When I knocked on her door, a sharp-eyed elderly woman answered. I introduced myself as her new neighbor and asked if she'd known the Wilsons. The change in her expression was immediate. "I knew them very well," she said carefully. "Why do you ask?" I decided to be direct and showed her the letter. As she read, her hands began to tremble. Then she started laughing, a hollow, haunting sound. "Come in," she said. "Tea here is something you should know." Over tea, Eleanor revealed the truth. She and Robert had never been lovers. Robert had discovered that his wife Margaret was embezzling money from her father's business and planned to report her to the police. He had confided in Eleanor because her husband was a detective. They met secretly to gather evidence and protect the children before confronting Margaret. Robert wasn't having an affair. He was building a case against his wife. The night before they were going to confront her, he became violently ill. Examen believed it was his kidneys. Nobody suspected Margaret. Eleanor had suspected the truth, but could never prove it. She stayed in her home all these years, watching Margaret, almost daring her to slip up. "That's why the house sold so cheaply," Eleanor explained. "The children know something isn't right. There have been rumors for years. No one can prove anything, but no one wants to live there either." She asked for a copy of the letter closure after 37 years of suspicion. I agreed, but asked what she planned to do with it. "Nothing," she said. "Robert and Margaret's children have suffered enough. Their youngest committed suicide in 1998. The other 2 barely speak to each other. What would justice look like now?" We buried the letter back in the attic behind new installation where no contractor would find it. Eleanor died peacefully 6 months later. Sometimes at night, I think I hear footsteps in our attic. My husband says it's just the house settling, but I wonder if some confessions are meant to stay hidden, and if the weight of secrets can settle into the very foundations of a home. We've lived here 3 years now. Our neighbors still call it the Wilson house. I've never corrected them.